Thank you, Mr. Ahmad. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you more for ending it. It looked very confused. You contradicted so many things. We're all university graduates, and we learn few things which are very contradicted to your ideas. But sorry, I'm not here to argue with you or anything. But
no, we go all night.
Would you let us know what's your back? I mean, we didn't get any introduction of what do you do? What's your field of study? Are you a religious person? I mean, promoter of a religion or a promoter of a science? Or do you work in evolution or evolutionary sciences?
Okay, so before I answer that, it's very easy to make claims. So you said a whole bunch of claims. You said there's a whole bunch of contradictions. You know, there's contradictions here. And what did I study? So I can say I studied mechanics. I can say I studied art. I can say I studied milk. It doesn't really matter.
No, it does matter because, I mean, we're here to listen to you and see your perspective. It just helps us to know with what background you are coming to these conclusions. So we can.
No, that's fine. That's fine. And we got all night, so it's not an issue. If you make a claim there's a contradiction, then you have to give evidence. So what's your evidence?
No, it's not about evidence. It's about a few things that I'm forgetting.
Give me your strongest point first.
You said science can be revised. Science has always been revised. So what's wrong with science being revised? And that's, I mean, we work with existing knowledge. Knowledge is always, we gather knowledge through our senses or through research, whatever you name it. And we are working with today's knowledge. After 10 years, 20 years, the knowledge might change. So we gather new knowledge and we work with that. So we go along with new learning. Yep. That's what's been happening throughout the civilizations. You know, we were never like this before. So we, I mean, I'm not contradicting whatever your opinions are, but I'm thinking what I learned and what I do at my work and what's happening in reality is, see, there is no one written rule of anything. You know, it's true today, a holy book, or it's been written. You know, I'm non-religious, by the way. So all these holy books are written by some human or somebody wrote it. You know, somebody told them to write or whatever. So it's written with the current knowledge of that particular time. So we gather knowledge, and so what's wrong with modifying ourselves to the new knowledge that we gain and we progress, and it's all for helping humanity. So if your statement that science is revised and science can be revised, so be it. There's nothing wrong with revising science.
Yeah, sure. I mean, what you said is really beautiful and sounds really poetic, but I did ask you to show me what contradictions I actually came across.
No, contradictions in the sense of, see, your presentation looked like you are anti-Richard Dawkins, but you are not anti-Darwin. It's just a bit vague, you know, it's a bit funny sometimes, where I couldn't try to understand that sometimes you look like you had a problem with Darwin, sometimes you didn't have a problem with Darwin. Sometimes you said evolution has been spoken for 3,000 years. So Darwin evolution is one type of evolution. So if you believe in evolution, with current today's knowledge of fossil evidences or DNA evidences or chromosomal whatever, so let's take it and understand, okay, that's today's knowledge. So our next generation might get even better knowledge of their existing circumstances. So your message tonight is you telling us to use your rational brain and rational thinking. I mean,
sorry, you're going on a bit and you're making some points. So I want to address one at a point. So what's wrong with me saying, okay, I agree with Darwin here and I disagree with him here? And what's wrong with me saying, okay, Charles Darwin would disagree with Richard Dawkins? Because I can give you academics who are atheists who say the same exact thing. They say Charles Darwin was wrong on this, but I really respect him because of this. So let's deal with one thing at a time, because what I feel like you're doing is you're making a whole bunch of claims that there's a contradiction here, you said this thing here, and then you bring in religion and holy books. But I just want to get precisely to what you're trying to say. And I'm not going to let you slip any point that you make, because I've heard this narrative a lot of times, and I want to make sure that each point is addressed. So please could you point out one contradiction in any of the things that I said here, and I'll be happy to go from one to another to another. And I'm not in a hurry, and I'm happy for you to hold the mic for the rest of the night.
Sorry, I'm not a professional speaker, so I couldn't give you a point. But you said first, I'm just trying to imagine the very first image of evolution. You said it's false.
Yep.
So like it's false in maybe in your opinion. You haven't given us any references or any. But it will be interesting to read your book that you said is coming out in.
Okay, wait. Okay, so let's go to that image.
Yep.
I said Darwinian evolution is not about progress, and this image is showing progress. This is, for example, evolution, philosophy of human evolution, which is published by Cambridge University. They actually said the same thing. Michael Roos says the same thing. He says, this image is false. And Michael Roos is an atheist philosopher of science. You said that's one reference. Another reference, The Accidental Species. The senior editor of Nature, Henry Gee, who is an atheist evolutionary biologist, and Nature is the most prestigious journal in the world. And in the beginning of the book, The Accidental Species, he has the same image which I put up there, and he basically says this image is false. Later on in the same book, he again addresses the same image, and he says that human beings coming from an ape-like ancestor, and we're shown this type of ancestor. He says no one knows what that fossil actually looks like. Apart from that, you actually have to understand that that image is still based on the assumption that natural selection is the mechanism. Naturalism is the assumption that everything has a naturalistic origin. There is the assumption of homology, and there is also the assumption of a single origin. So that public perception that this is the image that Darwinian evolution works, that is seen as completely false by evolutionary academics. Now, I've just given you two references there and one problem. So what's your second contradiction?
No, I'm happy that you are telling you have a problem with that picture, that image.
No, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that the points that you're making are addressed. So your first point was my presentation was riddled with contradictions. So you pointed out the first thing that you thought was unreferenced, so I just dealt with that. So would you acknowledge the next contradiction?
No, so I can't.
Because it sounds like it sounds like you want to make claims but not give evidence for them. So I want to make sure you give claims.
I haven't recorded your entire presentation. Okay. So how can you tell us tonight that 99.999% of species are unobserved? Where did you get that statement from?
Well, if you were listening twice, I mentioned the National Science Foundation.
Okay. Of what? Of what nation?
America.
American National Foundation.
No, National Science Foundation of America. 99.999% species are missing.
Are missing.
They've never been observed, we don't have their DNA, and we have no fragment of even our imagination that can tell us what those actually look like.
Okay.
And I did mention that in my presentation.
That would be good to check up those things. You know, I'm
sure.
here to learn.
No, I'm happy for you to check up if you actually know what you're talking about. If you actually say your presentation is riddled with contradictions, then what you have to do is you made a positive claim. You didn't make an agnostic claim. So if you said to me, sir, your presentation has references which I don't understand, or I wasn't paying attention, or I don't know what they actually are, I would have respected that. But what you tried to do is something which I've heard many, many times before. You said, this presentation is riddled with contradictions. You've made a positive claim. So since you made that positive claim, I'm going to make sure that you need to give me evidence for that, and I want to address that. Yeah, no, so what's your next one?
I was sorry about my comment, because I'm not a trained speaker like you are.
I'm not a trained speaker either.
Maybe my statement I couldn't back up, but the thing is, so many things that you try to tell us tonight, it will be good to check up. That's what I'm trying to...
No, that's not what you said in the beginning. What you said was it was filled with contradictions.
That's what I mean. My contradiction may be a wrong word to use, but we're not winning here. We're not debating. I'm just trying to learn from your perspective, how my perspective is different from yours and how yours is different to mine. That's
very different to what you said in the beginning.
I'm apologizing. I am sorry for
No, let's get this correct. Let's get this correct.
I'm not a trained speaker or a professional in teaching.
But you are a human being, you are a Homo sapien, and you can communicate. You do have a brain, you can actually think.
Through evolution, I become a Homo sapien, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thanks, man.
No. I'm going to hold the mic. You're not going anywhere. Relax. So, how many people here, raise your hands if you heard him say the presentation is full of contradictions? Raise your hand. There's a lot of people there. Okay.
How many people listened to me that I was sorry to use that word contradiction because I didn't have a good way to ask you questions, you know? Well, I should have asked you, you should have given more references of
in fact, I was giving references throughout. Now, it's impossible for me to actually get everything written down there, but I was mentioning, for example, when I mentioned species that were missing 99.999%, I did mention the National Science Foundation. I did mention it again at the end. I tried to mention all the references possible, and I did mention that the juicy parts can be the Q&A. So if there's, and I'm putting this challenge out there, if there is anything in my presentation which is contradictory, or anything in my presentation which looks false, or any place where I've misquoted someone, or any place where something looks out of place, I am happy to change it and happy to apologize for being wrong. But one thing I will not accept is for someone to try and show as if all I've shown is a bunch of, contradictions, and I'm just trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. And one thing which I'm really, really happy you brought up in the beginning is, you said you've got so many contradictions and problems. What did you study? I'm just going to be frank with you. I could have studied milk. It doesn't matter. Or I could have studied, fashion designing. As long as what I'm saying is correct, that's all that matters.
No,
and on top of that, you had your chance to speak. So as long as what I'm saying is a fact, that's all that matters. And in terms of what I am studying the philosophy of biology. I'm doing postgraduate studies in that. If you are going to make a claim like, what have you studied, what have you done, what are you doing this? Did Charles Darwin study biology, or did he study geology?
He's a doctor, so he knew biology.
He was not a doctor.
He was a doctor, and he studied biology.
He studied geology. He was a geologist.
Geology is a biology.
Okay.
Zoologist. He was a zoologist, and he's a Dr. Charles Darwin. He is a doctor. Okay. So
where did he get his PhD?
He's a doctor by profession.
Where did he get his PhD?
I don't know. Where did he get it?
Okay. Where did he do his degree?
I don't know.
It was Edinburgh. Okay. So first off, he wasn't a doctor. He was a geologist.
Okay. Sorry.
And look, no. What I want to do is this. I want you to explain why you think it's important to try to challenge the content, try to make grand claims about contradictions in the beginning, to try and undo a presentation. I spent a good 45 minutes explaining, even though it doesn't look like you know the heads and tails of this field. It just sounds like you're an ideologue.
That's why I'm here to listen to you.
No, it seems like you have an agenda, and I want to make sure that you either apologize for coming up with nonsense, or you basically come up with a contradiction, in which case I'll change the slide.
No, it's not contradiction. See, I may be wrong in using the word contradicting, but what I wanted to get from you is, how can you, I should say, where did you get this reference that human beings are more close to ants than apes, or primates, I should say?
Okay, The Accidental Species, Henry Gee, the book.
Accidental species.
Yep. Also, there's other evolutionary biologists who've studied this, and they've spoken about human beings being closest to crows in terms of intelligence. There's also some studies on that. The sociological link between ants and humans. The book is called The Social Conquest of Earth by E.O. Wilson. He's an evolutionary biologist as well. So what more do you want?
No,
apart from that?
I was just wanting to know, where did you get this information?
Because I read, because I think, because I reflect. I don't just turn up at lectures and try to challenge people when I don't understand what I'm doing.
That's why I wrote it down. Accidental Species by Henry Gee.
Yeah, I'm glad you did. What else do you have?
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I think Charles Darwin's dad was a doctor. I got that mixed up.
I don't know what his dad was, but what I do know is that he was quite nuanced, he was quite balanced, and he is somebody who is very much different to the likes of Richard Dawkins. And he had a character in which sometimes he was blatantly racist, according to even his biographers, and other times he seemed to be somebody of compassion in terms of slavery and stuff like that. Now, is there anything else in my presentation that you found contradictory?
No, I was sorry because you took me wrong completely. I wanted to know more about you because we sat here just through a Facebook share invitation, so we didn't know who we're listening to.
Look, like I said,
that's why I wanted to know what was
and
your
no,
background.
this is a very important thing. Human beings, we accept authority. So when
It's
somebody,
not authority. It's because I've been to many public lectures, many things. So that I think it's a tradition to have the introduction to the speaker and who. See, you come from London. I don't know. That's not been introduced.
I mentioned that he's from the UK. He has postgraduate studies in this area, and he's also in.
That's what I'm missing. That link. I'm missing that.
is it a missing link?
No, it's not about missing link. It's, see, if you introduced yourself with fully.
Look, like I said, my friend, I could have introduced myself like a delivery man who delivers milk.
No,
as long as what I'm saying is true, it doesn't matter.
That's fine.
It doesn't matter at all.
I just told what I wanted to know, but that's what your answer was. That's
Sure.
I'm happy with
So
it.
are there any contradictions in the talk?
No more. All good.
Oh, there aren't. Okay, that's fantastic. Great.
Okay,
Thank you very
let's
much.
move on to the next question. In the middle there.